Hey folks, welcome back to the Keep It Wausome podcast. As always, I'm BC. Got a very special guest with me today. And first, I want to thank my sponsors, Scotty's Ale House and Eatery, Campbell Haynes Menswear, and my new sponsor, Verve Salon. Appreciate it. Big shout out to all you guys for helping me out. But my guest today, and I'm so excited to have William on. My guest is William Harris. William Harris is a county board supervisor. As far as we know, the very first Black county board supervisor. Am I correct about that, William?
Yes.
Yeah. And also attorney at Judicare, which helps people, low-income folks, help get law services. Is that correct?
Yes, low income and also victims of domestic abuse.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on the show, William. First off, I wanted to kind of talk about what it's been like being a county board supervisor.
Well, it's been, I mean, getting used to sort of, I guess I never had considered myself as, and still don't consider myself as a politician, more of a public servant. So it was a different way to do something in order to help people. I got in it because I thought that maybe I could be effective and try to get some things done for our community. And so county board supervisor requires you though to use a lot of the skills that you use in law in terms of advocating for people, obviously speaking up about issues that are important, but it also requires you to really work, in a team environment and trying to work with other supervisors and listening to their concerns, listening to the public's concerns. Sometimes you go back and forth on different things. Sometimes something looks like it's about to pass and then it doesn't, and you got to go back and do some more work. And sometimes it looks like it's not going to pass and then it does. So it's definitely been a ride. And I'm very honored and privileged to be in this position and thankful to my community.
And what prompted you to get into to run for county board in the first place? I'd seen that I read through to prepare for the interview. I read through the newsletter, the county newsletter, where they interviewed you, and I know you said something about that you thought county board was something for old people or politics in general, maybe. And I think a lot of people have that perception that there's like some kind of special qualification for city council or county board, and really. I found that it's really just that desire to serve that's sort of the prerequisite.
Yeah, and that's what I found in practice too. I think it can be to a person just starting out that wants to get involved in politics. It can be intimidating. I mean, the whole campaign process, not knowing about how to do that and how to raise funds, how to advertise. So there's so much that goes into that, and then. You're going to be joining a board where people, have been on a board or served in politics, have much more experience in the political realm. And so it's always something that, you see on TV, you see mainly, people who are, later in your years. And so, and you don't really see, you now are starting to see more younger people in politics. But, in terms of being a voice, I think there also is a perception that, starting as a young person, you probably be low on the totem pole, won't really have, an opportunity to really be effective. And so all those things were kind of going sort of in my mind, as I'm sure a lot of people, and, how effective can I be? But I think, as I said before, sort of the time in which we're in and being inspired by like when President Obama said, we're the ones we're waiting for. You can't wait on other people or wait on other things to happen. If you have a desire to serve, you should get out there and do it. And like myself, I said, hey, if I get on there, I'm not going to be silent. I'm not going to not do anything. I'm going to step up. And if I don't see there's something that I want to get done, well, I'm going to learn how to get out there and do it, and engage and try to be the best supervisor I can be so I can be the most effective representative for the people and just jump out there. And so I did.
What was it like just going door to door? I know COVID made it a challenge toward the end. The election was in April, so obviously there was some lead up time before COVID kind of shut that part of politicking down. But what was that like going door to door? What were your thoughts going into it? What that experience was going to be like, and then what was it actually like?
Sure. That was actually probably my favorite part of
Yeah.
campaigning. When I started out, I didn't know really what to expect. I didn't know at that time that if I were elected, I'd be the first Black person to serve. My focus at
Mhm.
that time was really just trying to show the vision that I wanted, for our community to move forward. But you don't know what to expect. I had done door-to-door sort of things before and advocating for causes. I was in college. We did a big fundraiser to raise money for cancer. Um, and so we were going door to door for a event. So I had done sort of that and been involved in some campaigns
Mhm.
before, but never for myself. So
Gotcha.
that's also sort of a different thing. But the great thing was that because it was, I think because it was freezing outside,
Right.
people were really, really nice and
Mhm.
accepting and allowed me to come inside. And actually, that made it better because we were able to sit down and have real conversations about what they thought about what they felt were the needs in our community, what they like to see. So it wasn't just about me telling them this is what I'm going to do for you or what I hope to do.
Mhm.
This is them telling me, hey, here's what I see, here's what I actually need, here's what I'd like you to advocate on my behalf. And so it was more, it was listening as well, which I
Mhm.
think is something that a lot of us tend, we have these ideas in our head, but the first step in sort of serving anyone and talking to people is listening,
Mhm.
hearing actually what those needs are in your community. And so it was a great experience. Not everyone obviously agrees on everything, obviously
Sure.
I'm doing, but we were able to sit down, and that's what I feel we need more of, being able to, even if you disagree with someone, you don't have to be disagreeable to
Right.
disagree and talk the reasons why you feel, because sometimes you can have differences and they be very valid on both sides. But I think people appreciate honesty. They appreciate
Mhm.
you being transparent about where you are, listening to reasons why you don't feel, or talking things out. Um, and since I've been a representative, I've had some of those same conversations where, for instance, we know with sort of the mask mandates, where some
Yeah.
people support it, some people don't. But
Mhm.
being able to just talk to people, it becomes less scary and less sort of combative when people are actually able to hear each other out. Because I
Yeah.
think everybody wants sort of the best, out of this scenario, and it's been tough and hard
Yeah.
for everyone.
Well, it's one of the tough things about about COVID and the pandemic, because everything's gone to, we're all kind of forced onto social media and Zoom calls and things like that. And I feel like, I'm sure you've had this experience too, where you have friends that seem like really combative and angry on social media, but you know them in real life, they're not normally like that. And I feel like even when you sit down with people that you might only know them from social media and you think, oh man, they must be just terrible. And you get to know them and you're like, okay, maybe I see a little bit more where they're coming from. I don't agree with them, but they seem much more reasonable in real life than on social media.
And I think that's what's needed, because I think we may have different views on how to get there, but in the end, I think we all want this virus to be gone. We all want a
Yeah.
healthy community, and finding a way to work together and do what's best
Mhm.
for our community requires that engagement.
Mhm.
And so I hope there's a lot more of that civil engagement between people and listening to each other.
So it sounded like your experience going door to door and campaigning was pretty positive. Did you have any negative experiences? Were there any scary moments or anything that happened like that?
I mean, of course, there are some people, and some people just don't want to, because of our sort of political environment,
Mhm.
even though this is a nonpartisan position, people
Yeah.
don't want to hear anything about politics, and I respect and understand where that's coming from.
Sure.
So there were, a few of those, but large on the large end, people were at least willing to hear me out and engage with me, which I really appreciated.
Did you think you were going to win?
Um, Actually, I did not. I will say this. I had no idea concept. I was.
Mhm.
I just my view on it was I think I didn't even think about whether or not I would win, and I felt like so like shocked when I actually heard
Right.
those words. I had one. For me, it was just, if I'm elected, great. It's an
Yeah.
opportunity and, things that I want to move forward. If I don't, then I'm going to try to find other ways in which I can serve my community. The person that I was running against, Nutting, we had actually conversated many times. We've since conversated after. He's a polite, really, nice guy. Obviously, we
Yeah.
have different visions in terms of what we wanted to
Mhm.
see. But he had been on there for a very long time. So
Right.
I didn't really know what to expect. And, I am I like to consider myself as adopted now by the community. But I
Okay.
was someone who came from outside of the community,
Yeah.
and made this my home. So I really didn't know what to expect. But, whatever the people had decided, I was willing to respect that and do whatever I could still to move forward and help in our community.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that made your election impressive too, is that you unseated an incumbent, which is, in small town politics, that's generally a much harder thing to do than maybe national level politics or state level. But it's always hard. I mean, the incumbent defeating an incumbent is always sort of an uphill battle, and in these county seats or city or county seats, a lot of times people don't even try. Like they don't. There's sort of this. Well, I'll run for it when that person steps down. And so I thought that made it a pretty impressive win that you were able to unseat not just an incumbent, but a long time incumbent. And yeah, I would agree. I've known David for a while. He's a very nice guy, very polite, as you said. And yeah, so I want to go back to one of the first things that happened under your term. And it's probably no surprise to anybody that Supervisor Gibbs is a fairly conservative fellow. And I was surprised to hear him say, it really struck me when he mentioned that he was more open to considering diversity after hearing from one of the county board supervisors, which was you. And for him to like start talking about that, I thought was really interesting. I wonder what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's no secret, and some of us are a little nonpartisan, a little more conservative, more rural. But I will
Mhm.
say, I think Chairman Gibbs has always tried to be fair,
Agree with that.
and has always listened, whether or not he's agreed or not,
Mhm.
to you, and that's been sort of our relationship moving forward. And that, I do feel that I can come to him and talk to him. We may not agree in the end on how he votes or where he goes,
Right.
but I really appreciate that about him. And I think he realized, sort of looking at sort of the moment of where we were, at that time too. I mean, this was, I don't know if, I think this was right before the George Floyd incident, but, other things have been happening. And I think in terms of looking at where he wanted to move the county and moving it forward in a direction that really embraces, community, I think we're in line with that, and sort of hearing from more diverse voice. I think he said he, really pays attention to that, because county board really, it hadn't been as diverse. Obviously, I was the first Black person elected. So I think that made a difference in stating, obviously that it's hard to make decisions, about diversity if you're not going to have actually diverse participation, people
Yeah.
who are diverse, actually. And he said, that made sense. And I really appreciate his leadership moving forward on that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I should point out too that it wasn't just words, but actually there was some real change because of that. I believe that was the reason why, and correct me if I'm wrong, why vice chairs were invited to the executive committee, because that brought younger voices into the room.
Yeah, it was a big change.
Mhm.
Credit to him, a huge change, most diverse for the board in history in terms of leadership positions, and also in terms of first year people coming in. Because I got vice chair of transportation coordinating committee. I didn't expect to get,
Right.
in terms of any leadership position coming in, because like I said, you already come in thinking, how hard is it going to be just to have a voice.
Right.
So wanting to do that, I think, was a big step forward for the community. I think it made a
Mhm.
big difference on how we functioned and some of the things we've gotten done, and in terms of building relationships, and hearing other different voices. So I really appreciate the fact that that he did that.
So, and not only are you the first Black County Board Supervisor, but you might, I guess there's no way to like confirm this for sure, but I've asked a bunch of people and I haven't found anybody to contradict it yet. You very likely are the first Black elected representative in like the entire county's history, as far as we can tell. And I wonder, the exception might be Tony Patterson, although he wasn't elected, but he served as the chair of the Police and Fire Commission for a long time. But beyond him, I believe you're the first guy. Does that come with any pressure? Do you not really think about it? Do you think more about the work and the serving, or does that? I wonder if that plays into your thought process at all.
It does in a way in that which I think whether I was the first or not. And wanting to make sure that and stating that everyone has a voice, everyone is represented, that communities of color, issues that affect diversity also are dealt with in terms of moving forward with our in our community. So I think obviously having a unique position and voice, I'm sure there is that expectation, and I do want to sort of use my position to encourage other people and other people of color to get involved as well in local politics. So I think I do think about that in terms of moving forward to make but I am focused as well, obviously on our community as a whole. But communities of color are part of the community, and so I have been moving forward on that end.
Have you had any people of color come up to you and say, "Hey, like that's super inspiring that you're in this position," or "This makes me want to do more," or anything like that?
I have, and I've also reached out to younger people in our community. When I was running, I had a young Black guy. He contacted me. We've since become friends, but to tell me just like how he was so inspired, didn't think like he'd ever see in his lifetime. And on one end, I feel a weight of responsibility and really proud and honored, but that was also a little sad for me hearing that.
Right.
And so, I've since, engaged with him and encouraged him, and also talked to other young people in our community. And I'm hoping sort of my other roles, sort of on the board of directors at the Boys and Girls Club, and some of the other roles I play in the community, I can really engage with sort of young people and encourage them.
That's a thought I had too, William. I thought like, oh wow, this is awesome. Finally a Black representative. And then it's like, wow, it took till 2020. Like, right. Like that's sort of insane, right? Like you think someone, like it was kind of hard for me to believe that that was even the case. Because it seems so ridiculous that it would take till 2020. But Wausau does have that history. Like the 7th congressional district at one time was like the whitest district in the entire country. Pretty much until the Hmong migration, and then we no longer were. But so, I mean, it's good. I was glad we have a person of color being a representative, and also just younger folks. I think the old saw about county boards were typically that's like kind of like a retirement position, and if someone got on the board in their 50s, we talk about how it might be a little early yet, so like the fact that it's kind of cool to see so many young people stepping up and doing it, and it's hard. Marathon County makes it a little easier, I think, than some like Portage County was notorious for having like these 7 a.m. meetings that really seemed aimed at the retiree set. And so I think Marathon, and I know Marathon County moved the board meetings to 7 p.m. instead of 2 p.m. to accommodate more younger folk getting on the board, which is cool. But I don't want to just focus on those things too, of course, because you haven't just shown up. I mean, you've really gotten some stuff done already, and have been pushing for for things, and also seen some of the bureaucracy up front and some of the challenges in getting what seemed like very obvious things done. And maybe you can talk a little bit about that challenge and what that's been like.
Sure. So I guess because I always think it is important to sort of just talk about some of the things that, and especially for my constituents, talk about the things that have been done, because it has been a busy year, I'll say. Obviously, one of the first things I supported and got through, which wasn't easy, was a nonpartisan redistricting resolution, and that I pushed forward because I really, which was difficult, and I think it passed by maybe 1 or 2 votes, because there is obviously the, people want to make it about, even though it's nonpartisan, make it about partisanship. But my thing was that diluting votes, the cracking, packing, all those things that you hear, it should be one person, one vote. We should do this in a way because it by sort of setting people up where you kind of already know who's gonna win, that doesn't promote democracy, and it causes people to be in positions that maybe shouldn't be there anymore, or causes those people to be accountable to the people that they actually represent. So I pushed that forward. That was the first thing. I've also supported, as of late, the initiative that I just brought forward in November was the Community Development Block Grant for coronavirus aid for the all Marathon County. As you probably know or may not, Wausau, the city, sort of unique in that they already have theirs, but everybody else in terms of the county did not have use of those community development block grant funds. And they go to rental assistance and helping businesses and things like that. So that's been moving forward. We just voted for a citizen participation group to sort of help administer it from the county end. That's going to do a lot for our community and people.
And I think that was the one that I was kind of referring to when I said seemingly obvious, and yet hit all these roadblocks. I thought, come on, guys, it's the same thing as the city. Pretty much can copy and paste everything. Like, of course, you want to help give assistance to people during the coronavirus, and it's not even your money; it's like the state money. Like, I don't know, that one I was sort of pulling up. I listened, I've been listening to a lot of these meetings, and that was one I was kind of pulling my hair out on, just because it seemed like, people can have different opinions on different things, but that one just seems sort of obvious to me.
Yeah, and I think, and I want to thank Tammy Strauss from the city, really helping lay out like how it worked, and that it doesn't require as much as I think people thought in their mind in terms of getting this done, and that this opportunity may not come again. People need this help right now, and thank Lance Leonard, the Marathon County Plan Administrator, for helping to then move it forward in terms of, because I know he has a large workload, and we had a very short timeline on this in terms of the intent to apply and the application.
Well, that was the key thing too. Like, I think that's what drove me nuts, is it was just about sending that letter to say, yeah, we'd like to apply for this. Like, do it, if someone said, hey, you can get $200 and you just have to send a letter saying you'll probably apply for it, I'm going to apply for it. I mean, that's one of the, so anyway, I won't.
And in this case, we've got over $1 million set aside for us. So.
I mean, like, just sending the letter to intent, that doesn't cost anything, and it doesn't, it doesn't obligate you to anything. And that just made a lot of sense, but I don't want to stick on that too long, but that was the reason why it was like, come on. I don't have that much hair left, so I can't afford to pull too much out,
I think, on the transportation end, I struggled. One of the first things I wanted to do was get a bus stop for Island Place, and also, for people who go to the market there and things that come over there. And that was sort of my first sort of like really sort of getting out there and really sort of advocating, and but it was great, in terms of working with the people there and trying to meet the needs again of my community and what people were telling me when I was running for office.
I was going to say, how did that come about? Did people reach out to you to say, hey, we really want a bus stop?
Yeah, so when I was running for office and I was, talking to people, talked to Island Place, was there a large amount of voters there within my district. And a number of people had mentioned the fact that that they would like a bus stop. They had mentioned how though a lot of them, may have cars that, they're getting to the age where they really don't like to drive. Winter, it's almost impossible to allow them to stay in. In terms of the ones that don't, it's very difficult, and just getting out in terms of transportation, wanting to go to basic places, just to shop or to, doctor's appointment or things. And really, it just seemed like it makes sense to just make a tweak on a bus route in order to allow, such a large group of people that lived in that center to be able to do that as well. And we're at a point where, in terms of transportation, we have a lot of challenges, and COVID has made that much more difficult in terms of ridership and things, whatever. So I want to try to be creative and try to increase, as many opportunities as possible. Expanding further out, obviously there is going to be a lot of work to that. I'm still working on that via the Metropolitan Planning Organization on next week. But I'm still working on that. And then overall, one of the other initiatives was we sent a resolution to the legislator for enabling legislation for the Regional Transit Authority, which would make it so much easier for other communities to link together, in terms of cost and everything else. So I've been trying to think of things on, working and supporting initiatives that help, right here, but also help our greater community, and also, if I can make a larger impact within the state in terms of that helps us all. Trying to focus on those. A lot of things are interrelated, and you need one in order to get the other done more effectively.
Right.
So working on that, we supported we have an elderly and disabled transportation grant application come up for 2021. We just voted in Health and Human Services to move that forward. Obviously, a lot on the COVID front, trying to, one thing we're going to do first is create a dialogue between people in terms of talking out, hearing their concerns, using WIPS, which is the Wisconsin Institute of Public Policy and Service, to sort of administer that process. But doing that, obviously, while we're also dealing with sort of distribution of the vaccine and working, getting information from the public health department and trying to then disseminate that information to the public in a responsible way that people know kind of what's going on. So working on that front as well. And then, sort of all the other organizations. Since I've been on the county board, one thing that has been a blessing is that I've been able to then get involved with other organizations. And so, just from the county side, I'm on the Health and Human Services Committee. I'm on Social Services Board, where I've been able to support new positions to help them, especially during COVID. We've also now been looking at sort of statistics when we talk about racial disparities in terms of health. I'm also on the Transportation Coordinating Committee, as I mentioned, but outside of that, I'm also on the Police Task Force. Obviously, we've been looking at doing policy review. Public engagement is where we're moving forward next, also with WIPS. I was actually able just to do a ride-along, and I do want to thank Officer Eric Guzman and Officer Michael Beddish for their time. How
was that? How was the ride-along?
It was great, because the one thing that not only are you seeing in real time, in terms of working, but you get to actually engage with officers who do this every day and get their perspective as well. And one of the things that's important to me on this police task force is that we get community engagement, but we also get, engagement from our officers, because I don't want this to feel like this is just something to come down on the officers. It's not. And, where we find there are things that need to improve, of course, we want to make ourselves better. But also, this is an opportunity also to educate the public about things that the police force is doing great. Our police force does a great job, obviously, and I call them sort of, everyday heroes in terms of, what they do. So I want to make sure that all of that is highlighted, that we're working toward improving things in terms of recruitment on the police force, in terms of more diverse recruitment, in terms of communication with the public. Because obviously, certain members of the public don't feel safe or don't feel a certain way. Obviously, we got to do a better job at that. But also then using the opportunity to highlight where we do well and where our officers do work hard. So police task force, I'm on the Police and Fire Commission. I'm now the vice president on the committee. So obviously we work at hiring new officers, making sure the caliber and character of officers, which has been tremendous, which, I give credit obviously to Chief Bliven and his staff, continues. And also, from the fire department and I just want to, also briefly say what a pleasure it has been to know and get to work with fire department chief Tracy Zhao, who's also been a trailblazer in her career, being the first fire department chief for First Stevens Point before becoming the first female fire department chief for Wausau.
In fact, I covered her down in Stevens Point when I worked down there when she became fire chief, and then she moved up to Wausau, and I moved back up to Wausau about maybe 6 months after she did. So I was joking. I always joked with her that's like, I was like, yeah, I just keep following you around, so you should go to Hawaii next or something.
But she's a class act, and she's very proud of the career that she's led, and I hope she has a happy retirement, very well deserved.
I got to know a lot of the folks in Stevens Point, and they really respected the heck out of her. I assume it was the same here. I don't know the firefighters here as much as I did down there, but like they really had they held her in high regard.
Yeah, and that's been the case here too. In talking with a number of the fire department officers here as well. Other organizations, I mentioned now I've joined. I'm on the board of directors of Boys and Girls Club. Started that. I'm going to be in the Human Resources Committee. But they do a great job. And during the COVID, they have been a sustaining force in our community in terms of a lot of kids that only get food, at school. There was that big gap, and they've been really instrumental in trying to fill that gap and doing programs like Blessing in the Backpack. And I hope to contribute to help them in terms of continuing to move forward on that end, and also helping kids, as they've been struggling, like we all have in terms of technology, trying to learn. And I mentioned I'm on the state bar committee in terms of trying to help recruit new lawyers, but I also try to stay involved with state bar. I will be judging high school mock trials and trying to encourage again, a younger generation moving forward to, this is to get in, want to be lawyers and get involved. I think it's an honorable profession. And then Black History Month, I have a few things coming up for that. So Latanya Campbell, she is putting on what she calls courageous conversations in the community. She works at the women's community, which I do outreach for. She also has her own organization, LPRC, and she works with and she's also on the Diversity Affairs Committee as well. So she'll be doing courageous conversations on February the 3rd, U.S. history after the transatlantic slave trade will be a discussion. February 10th, but is racism through a trauma-informed lens. February 17th, why are we still talking about racism? February 24th, racism and how it intersects with Black women, and she'll do a lunch and learn on February 16th. On my end of it, it's important to have those conversations, engage the community. But also, Black History Month is also a celebration of the achievements of African Americans. So I will be releasing videos starting on the 1st and throughout each week on prominent, not only African Americans, but prominent African American Wisconsinites who have made a difference here. And different people in our community are recording those videos, and those will be posted throughout the month of February as well.
Cool. Just for readers to know, listeners or watchers, I'll try to leave a link down in the description if you're watching on YouTube, or I'll try to link somehow maybe in the show notes on the podcast if I can to some of that stuff.
All right, and I'll have it posted on my Facebook, but I can also send you copies of those as they post.
Excellent.
And obviously, at Judicare, I'm still a lawyer full time as well. I do outreaches at Taylor County. I'll be doing more in Lincoln County, for the women's community. In terms of law, those that don't know, I'm an attorney. I do family law, representing only the victims of domestic abuse and child abuse, housing law, helping people try to prevent them from being homeless. which is more and more of a concern as we're moving through and out of this coronavirus, and also represent people trying to get unemployment benefits, which if anybody has gone through that knows that is not that's
Yeah.
not been an easy process.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I serve on the board of directors for the Hmong American Center, which serves the Hmong American community in so many ways in terms of giving food, helping people that are adjusting to the community. And I'm so proud of them. We just had Hmong New Year. And then just sort of overall over the year, other initiatives I supported. Obviously, I support the community resolution, Community for All resolution moving forward. I think that'll be important for our community. I believe it's a statement about our character and where we're going to move forward. And I know there's been some concern. People were afraid that by just stating acknowledging sort of disparities, that in some way we were saying our community is racist. And that is not the goal. Our community is not insulated though from the rest of the world, the rest of the rest of the United States. There are challenges here, and I think we were able to show in that meeting the real numbers in terms of challenges. But I think it's important that we're able to have those conversations, because how can we move forward if we don't acknowledge that some of those issues exist, but also not be proud of the fact that we're a community that actually wants to talk about this stuff, that actually wants to make sure that everybody in our community feels welcome. And I think it says a lot to people who are looking to move to this community as well, in terms of their ability to be able to come to this community and be welcomed. So I support that.
William, do you get any time to sleep in there? That's a lot of stuff.
I do. I always set aside for myself. I try to set aside something to look forward to a day out of the week. During the summer, my bucket list was to visit as many state parks as I could.
Nice.
I found a lot of Wisconsin to do that. It was also safe in terms of COVID. Going to the state parks.
Good time to do that for sure.
So I'm going to try to get into some of the winter activities. I failed miserably at downhill skiing last winter, but I'm going to pick up and try to do better at that and do some snowshoeing.
Cool. Snowshoeing is good.
I actually planned to do that yesterday, but then obviously the weather started to change. But I try to get out and also talk with friends and family and set aside. I always tell people, no matter how involved, you got to set aside some time for yourself, so that you just don't wear down, and also you have something to look forward to in your own life. So
you came from Florida originally, right? If I read
yes, from West Palm Beach.
West Palm Beach, yeah. And as I understand, one of the schools you went to, Masters, I think, was it in Michigan?
So I got my undergrad degree from University of Tampa, major in government and world affairs, minor in law and justice. But I also was able to then study abroad at Oxford, and did comparative analysis of countries on different issues. And then
let me stop you there. What was Oxford like?
It was a great experience, and actually I had just missed. So I'm going to age myself now. So when I went the semester right after Chelsea Clinton. So she actually had been living on the same street. She had just moved out right when I was moving in.
Oh wow!
But it was an incredible experience in terms of, because I got to travel as well. So in terms of went to Rome and Paris and Dublin and. But in terms of meeting people and having discussions, it was because at that time I think we were going through the Iraq War and other things, but people were willing to engage in political discussion, and it wasn't nastiness and stuff, and just in terms of getting to know and learn about different cultures and history. I love all that stuff.
Nice.
On that end, so it was just an incredible experience. It was very tough in terms of the studies. How that worked is the actual university is more or less where you go to study, but in terms of the teaching, they assign you certain teachers. We did one-on-one tutors where you come in, they assign you a stack of books, and then you have to have read all those books within a week and write a paper. And when you go meet with them, they go down and basically just really my favorite part, but it actually by the end became so much better at, in terms of, recognizing different points on both ends, advocacy being more persuasive, their style, very direct, which I appreciated, because I think I learned a lot from that experience.
Well, I was just thinking about how like a lot of new county boards, well, and not just county board, but any political body, local political body, usually people take like a term or two to kind of get their feet wet, so to speak. And, this maybe start speaking up, a couple terms in. I can see why you weren't too afraid of just jumping right in. You're kind of used to the hot seat, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I said to a number of people when I was going around and I was running, like, if elected and being elected, it's an honor and a privilege, and I don't think anyone should feel like it's a safe spot ever. And you're there as long as the people want you, and I will serve as long as the people want me. But while I'm there, I look at it as, I could be here this term, gone the next term, but in the term that I'm serving, I want to do as much good as I can for my community as possible. And so you can't do that on the sidelines. You got to get right out there and try to get things done if that's your goal and that's what you're telling people in terms of representing them. And so I've, like you said, I've not been afraid to sort of go off, go places and do things. And I think I get that largely from my family. My parents have always been, involved in our community, whether that's giving soup kitchens, involved in their church. And my granddad, in terms of, being able to be unafraid to go places. He was a truck driver, and during the summers, I'd ride with him and stay with him in Texas and come back. So, that sense of travel and curiosity, I think developed as a young person, and from Tampa and Oxford. Then I went to Michigan to get my Juris Doctorate degree, a law degree, and then I went to DC to get a dual master's in international legal studies and in constitutional and civil rights law. And then loved the Midwest, so came back. I had some friends I knew in Wisconsin, and really fell in love at that time with the Madison area. So that was how I first came to Wisconsin and stayed there. But wanting to sort of develop my career and really do things, because I always say you can do anything to make money, but really my goal was to help people, and Judicare offer that opportunity in terms of the freedom to do different things in terms of cases. I didn't have to be stuck in sort of one area, but then also the opportunities that they had in terms of helping people. I loved it, because one of the other things that I was just able to do, we just had the point in time count, and Judicare was the first to sort of let us know about that, and also encouraged us to do projects. They've encouraged community involvement and engagement. So I owe a lot to them in giving me that opportunity and chance, and was glad I did come to this community, because I loved it.
That's great. I wanted to ask, as someone who's like not from Wausau, like what was it like moving here as a fairly young person, and what are some of the good parts, and maybe what are some of the not so good parts?
Sure. So I think when I came here, sort of in moving anywhere else, I guess one difference is before I moved to Wausau, I had always sort of lived in bigger cities. And so I think for me there was a fear that the taking on my dream job, but then after that, what am I going to do? And coming by myself, not knowing anyone really here, am I going to be able to really make this my home? And I think so. Like any other person starting out new, I think those were my fears. But I did want to move. It was intentional on my part to want to move to a smaller community, because I took the Wisconsin bus tour to smaller communities for that purpose. And so, since then, finding that it was a great fit for me in terms of the community, in terms of getting out there, because you can actually know your neighbors, actually get to know people, which in a large city, you don't. I think one of the things I mentioned too, that was for most people is nothing, but it always stuck out in my mind. So growing up West Palm Beach, Florida, not that people aren't friendly, But hardly do you ever like just running, like people like stop, say, hi, how are you doing? Good morning, just the good morning. And so like people, people you don't even know, and just that friendly sort of nice nature, and people going out of their way, to help show you where something is, or to give you, I found, all of that was something that I felt really endearing. And I loved about this community, and made it a lot easier to sort of settle in. And the fact that people were willing to, as a new person, embrace me and welcome me, I thought was also, a sign to me that this is somewhere that, I picked the right place to be.
So I've heard from people who move here, a lot of times one of the problems they have is like making friends. I've heard it's kind of tough to make friends here. It sounded like maybe you didn't have that problem, or have you?
Well, what I did was, so I guess one of the things, and it's another sort of, might be as a spiel, but a reason why you might want to get involved in your community with projects in terms of community involvement, because you can meet great people out there who are also trying to better their community. That's how I met a lot of people. The first person actually I met, really engaged with here, was Lance. This is before he's plan administrator.
Oh yeah.
I signed up for a state bar mentorship, but really to sort of get the legal landscape in terms of meeting judges and lawyers here, to kind of learn people here. And so he was assigned as my mentor here, and he introduced me to all the judges and lawyers, and that first sort of gave me an introduction to the legal community. But he also introduced me to the Hmong American Center, and from there, just one thing sort of built on another, in terms of talking to people and find out they're involved with this, and saying, oh, would you like to get involved with this, and in terms of different projects. But through those projects, which I wanted to do, because I kept saying I want to get involved in my community, and what are the ways and different things. Not only did it, sort of fuel my passion in terms of things that I want to do and help out my community, but I met a lot of great people along the end. So if you stay inside, the winter can be very brutal because there's not a lot going on, and you won't meet a lot of people. But if you get out there in terms of, working with people and working on different projects that, find whatever passion you have, use that passion to help people. You can meet other people and get out there. And then once you learn the community, you learn about all these outdoor great activities that you enjoy. Of course, being from Florida, I grew up, fishing and out there in the water. Still do that during the summer. Love the lake days and things like that. But also, I'm learning, snow activities and I love the festivals. We didn't have a whole lot of those going on. We had one big summer festival, but in terms of Balloon Fest and Chop Fest and all those other great things where the community really supports each other, engages, and supports the businesses around here too. I just think is wonderful.
Yeah, so it sounds like what you're saying is like it's kind of a two-way street. Like people aren't just going to come to knock on your door and say, "Hey, you're new, let's be friends." Like you got to kind of put yourself out there a bit too.
Yeah, people will say hi and be nice, but in terms of actually developing relationships with people, you have to be willing to put yourself out there, and I think that goes with sort of everything in life.
Yeah, I noticed. I know some of the people who have told me that I kind of like keep an eye on them, and I noticed they would like leave town every weekend. I think, well, you kind of have to do some stuff here if you're going to get, if you're going to make friends. Like you said, it's like it doesn't just happen magically. Like you have to get out there a little bit and getting involved. I think that's a great idea, by the way, getting involved in stuff in your community. Like not only are you doing good, but you're probably going to meet some people and make some new friends. It's a very good point. Yeah. Is there anything that you've struggled with around here?
I think just we're.
I was going to say, especially going from a big city to a smaller one.
Yeah, sure there are times when I want to, like, one of my favorite places is I like Chick-fil-A.
Oh.
And so in some of the other restaurants, maybe we don't have all those right here. But the great thing though about being
wait, don't say Red Lobster. Just please don't say Red Lobster. I don't know if you're aware of the joke, but there was like it was like this ongoing thing where everyone was like, when are we gonna get a Red Lobster? And it's like, never. We're never getting a Red Lobster. Just get over it.
although I am a big seafood person coming from Florida.
Hey, seafood's great.
So that's another thing I wish I do wish there were more seafood restaurants. But the
Yeah,
great thing though about being in Central Wisconsin is you're not that far from anything. You're like two
that's
hours,
true.
an hour and a half from anything. So if I'm
Mhm.
really having a craving for something that's not actually here, I'm not that far from it. There
Yeah.
are a lot of great restaurants and businesses here as well. And a lot, you know, the one thing about here that that is different is that I mean, in terms of all the local spots, they're not
Yeah.
chains. You know, Red Eye and some of the other great
Hmm.
restaurants here you can go to where the food is, you know, fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I'm right. I said my apartment's right above Lemongrass, and so you know, it's a new restaurant that's
Oh,
come and you know, really tasty. So you know,
so
there are
you
a
got
lot
one
of
of
that.
the rare downtown apartments that are so hard to get.
Yeah.
That's been the big thing is like, that's, one of the big things with the mall project is to put more people downtown. It was kind of funny. I was interviewing Mark Craig about it and someone called while I was on the phone with him asking for like a downtown apartment. He's like, we got nothing. Like, so there's like a demand to live downtown. And that's always been the thing is like, they're really hard to get.
Yeah, I guess actually that was a struggle. So when I first came here, so most, you know, a lot of downtown. Is set for low income in terms of meeting those
Mhm.
restrictions. And so I didn't quite, you know, obviously I didn't meet that. And so wanting to sort of be downtown because I didn't, not knowing the community and wanting to be close to work, did struggle to find a place at
Mhm.
first. And so I first took a smaller unit downtown 4th Street, and then I met Mark Craig and happened to get in there right at the right time, and there was a opening.
Nice.
And got in here, and you know the apartments are beautiful, the building is beautiful, and you know he does a fantastic job at making sure that everything you know runs smoothly. So yeah, I'm excited that there will be other opportunities for other people, you know, that want to move here and find a you know nice place to live, want to live close to downtown to be able to do so. I think it'll make a you know a big difference in terms of you know recruiting other people you know that want to you know maybe work at different jobs here as well
Mhm.
and can be you know really great in terms of contributing to our community.
Do you get down to Florida a lot to visit your family?
So I don't get down there a lot, but one thing I do go, you know, my mom
Not as
has
I was gonna
made
say,
me
not as often as your mom would like, right?
right, but she
Yeah.
has made me promise that no matter
Yeah.
where I'm at, no matter how many places I've been, that I always come home for the holidays.
Yeah.
And so I always have, which has actually been a great thing during the winter time,
Mhm.
you know. And that was one of the
Mhm.
things actually, you know, when I first moved here, talking about, you know, and talking about possibly working here, as I said, you know, I don't take off a lot of time during the year at all.
Yeah, I know that.
But I save up that time during that year, and I said, you know, I'm going to need that time, those 2 or 3 weeks, to really go back home and really see my family, because you think a lot has changed over the year, you know, in terms, you know, my grandmother is growing older, and you know, my little nephew is now getting bigger, and other things, and so making sure that I'm able to at least have that time with my family. So they were obviously
Yeah.
very accommodating, and so it's been great. I go home during the holidays, spend you know some good
Mhm.
time with them, and also enjoy the beach a little bit,
Yeah.
and hang out because usually we're at a slight cold front, but I'm not gonna be a baby about it because I know for most people 40 degrees, you drop you know a couple of days is nothing.
Yeah.
But I still got you know still had our 80-degree days or whatever. So you know wonderful,
Nice.
and I do talk to my mom probably at least twice a week, if not
Nice.
more, and my grandmother, and stay in touch with my family, my sister.
Mhm.
So you know, it's harder not seeing them every day.
Mhm.
But you know, I've kind of always been a lot of different places anyway, and
Yeah.
just making sure that we still connect, and I go back home every
Mhm.
you know at least once a year,
Cool.
making sure that that's a priority.
Have any of them come up to Wausau to visit, see where you live?
Yes, actually, my parents did not this year, obviously, or 2020, obviously because of COVID.
Yeah.
But how we had planned it was I would come home once a year, and they would come here once a year was supposed to be the
Mhm.
plan. But obviously last year didn't fit that. But they came the year before that, and it's funny
Gotcha.
because well, first of all, my dad had never before I had moved up north. He had not been in snow or up north or any place. His first introduction was when I was in Michigan moving to DC, and it was like negative something.
Oh,
And so he
yeah.
said, when I come back to visit you, I do not want it to be during winter. I don't want
Yeah.
cold. So
Probably a good idea.
they came during May,
Hmm.
which actually, as you know, sometimes it snows and it's
Yep.
cold still through May. So I think when they came that other year, it was a little rainy in Madison because we visited Madison. They stayed in Madison first, and then but it wasn't too bad. But then coming back up north, even 2.5 hours, you could still see a little bit of snow on the ground. And then we had one of those windy days, and my dad's like, "What happened to the temperature?" Uh, but they came to visit and saw our work and got to see the community, and they thought it was great. My dad comes from a smaller community, comes from Belglade, Florida, is where he grew up, and my mom, they grew up near West Palm Beach area. All of her family is originally from Dothan, Alabama, from my mom's side. So smaller towns out of Alabama. So most of my family's kind of spread out down south and up north, and a lot of them in smaller towns, with the exception of like Atlanta and Dallas. So they were kind of used to sort of more so in terms of small town, and I think could really appreciate it and thought in terms of my ability to be here and make a difference in the community and really get to know people. They were happy about that, as whereas
That's
I think
cool.
she's worried when I've been in big cities by myself.
Yeah, you just kind of get lost in the crowd, and here you can have more of an impact, I think. Yeah, that's cool. So do you see yourself staying in Wausau for a while? Have you really take to the smaller city kind of a thing, or do you see that changing in the future?
I have, so everyone will have to get used to being here for quite a long time. So I hope it's okay. But yeah, I
I
plan
think
to
we're
be
glad to
here.
have you, man.
So I plan to be here. I'm settled down here, and I hope to make this my permanent home
Cool.
and moving forward. I really love the community, and they've really embraced me, and likewise, as I said, I feel like I'm an adopted son here.
That's awesome. Well, any words you want to leave folks with? We can definitely shout out that the stuff for Black History Month. I definitely want to make sure we get that out there.
I mean, I think, what I said before in terms of, well, one thing's coming up, and I do want to make sure I mention that as well.
Hmm.
I am going to be part of the Mask Up campaign, so I'll be doing photos and pictures, but I really want to encourage people um, to continue to wear masks. I know that the vaccines are
Hmm.
coming, and I know that it's been a long haul in terms of the year, and you're tired of wearing those. I get that, but you don't want to be the last one to die before you get the vaccine, or pass it on
Hmm.
to someone that you love or someone out there. So even if you don't feel like it's really necessary for you, think of the person that you might come in contact with. Maybe they have a compromised immune system, other things. We as a community have to continue to pull together to support each other. So I encourage people to continue to wear their masks, continue to be safe, social
Hmm.
distance. And I thank our mayor for continuing to also do things to make sure our community is safe. Um, and we're going to continue to try to support our community and try to get resources as well for those out you that are hurting. So hang in there. Um, and I think what I will leave us with is a quote. So Cicely Tyson just passed away, and I remember watching a number of her movies, from Mary Jane Pittman to Marva Collins, which was the big one where she was an educator. She worked in the realm in terms of women in roles, and really made an impact in terms of Black community being out there. And she has this quote, which I want to kind of leave you with. And the quote states, I think when you begin to think of yourself as having achieved something, then there's nothing left for you to work towards. I want to believe that there is a mountain so high that I will spend my entire life striving to reach the top of it. And that's sort of what I think we should all sort of strive to, and what I strive to in my life, that no matter what's achieved or what we've done, we can always improve. We can always work toward making this a better community for ourselves and our children, our future. I'm going to try to do my very best moving forward as a representative and continue to do so. Thank you.
Well, William, I think you're the first person on the podcast to end things with a quote. I like it. You came prepared. Very cool. Hey, it was awesome having you on. I end my podcast by saying keep it Wausome to my guests. So keep it Wausome here, William.
Keep it awesome. Thank you again. I
Cool.
really
Hey,
appreciate the opportunity.
yeah, thanks for being on. That's awesome.